Hello and welcome to the ESG and NTT Data discussion on digital transformation and the keys to cloud migration success. I'm Scott Sinclair, Practice Director with Enterprise Strategy Group, and I'm joined today by Dominic Bagnulo at NTT Data. Dominic, excited to chat with you, talk all about all things cloud and how to achieve cloud migration success. Before we begin though, can you provide our audience a quick overview of yourself and your role at NTT Data?
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. So like you said, Dominic Bagnulo, I work for NTT Data Services, and I'm responsible for the portfolio of service offerings around cloud transformation and hybrid infrastructure. I work out of the Chief Digital and Strategy Office here. We focus on these offerings and bringing them to market.
Yeah, and this is, this is an excellent topic because it plays into, I want to say, something nearly every business is running into, is really this cloud migration journey. So my role at Enterprise Strategy Group is as practice director, and we do a tremendous amount of research on all the trends that are impacting modern IT, as well as DevOps and application modernization practices, really the ways in which businesses maximize their ability to leverage and utilize technology. And one of the big trends we've been talking about for years is this idea of digital transformation. And it's pervasive right now. In our recent Enterprise Strategy Group research, 99% of organizations, so basically everybody, has some sort of digital transformation underway. And what we often find is as organizations start these journeys, or as they're in the middle part of that transformation journey, is much of the effort is around transforming their IT operations, as well as designing their processes for the cloud. How do we modernize while also leveraging public cloud services? So we have that modernizing the foundation is a key part of it. In addition to this, we also see automation playing a significant role. As digital business becomes the norm, IT operations and digital initiatives drive revenue. If IT is driving revenue, people need to move faster. So what we see is, again, nearly everyone has had to accelerate operations over the last 3 years. And when we ask people how they want to do it, some of the top answers are we have to automate and we have to increase our investment in public cloud. So Dominic, this is one of the main reasons I want to talk to you about all the work you're doing here. Those are some of the stats. That's the quantitative element, but I really want to understand the personal, the human element. What are some of the things you're seeing within your clients around their digital transformation journeys, or really their cloud migration journeys?
I would say that the business transformation is just as important as the IT transformation. So giving your employees the tools they need to do their jobs, modernizing all of the systems, whether it's a legacy fax machine that you're trying to get rid of the paper, moving up to more modern applications. Public cloud and automation are great topics. They're very synonymous with each other. Moving your systems towards a methodology that allows you to do automated deployments, automated upgrades, automated feature releases, much easier when you move to public cloud. There's a lot of resources and technologies that are available to you from the large hyperscalers. That's why there's such a consistent effort to do both at the same time.
Absolutely. I think, cloud and automation go hand in hand, because at the end of the day, it's all about trying to do more with the resources you have. It goes back to that digital business point that I was talking about earlier, right? If your business runs on digital operations, then the more initiatives you can kick off, the more things you can do with the people and the resources and the budget you have, the more money you make. The flip side of this, as great as cloud adoption has been, is now we live in this world where multi-cloud is the dominant operating model. Also, as part of our research, we see 86% of organizations leverage more than one public cloud provider. And when we look into it and we focus in on some of those challenges that organizations face, and as they try to manage these environments that span multiple clouds, what you see is, 44% of organizations saying, look, it's difficult for us to get proper coordination across the various teams. In addition to that, things like ensuring security becomes a key challenge, as noted by 36% of respondents. And before we get too far into it, because it's such an important topic, Dominic, I'd really like to understand what's NTT Data's approach to ensuring security for applications as you guys help your clients migrate to the public cloud?
Yeah, probably the most important thing for our customers is ensuring that the applications and the data are secure. You don't want to be that company in the news, so there's a lot of focus on it. Migrating to a secure work landing zone is probably the most important thing. So if you do nothing for your applications and you just move them to the public cloud, the most important thing is that your landing zone, the destination for your applications, is secure. We have a lot of ways that we do that, repeatable processes, ways to deploy infrastructure. We focus on securing communication, securing data, whether it's in motion or at rest, securing access to the resources in the public cloud, all of those types of things. Building a secure cloud foundation is really how we start. There's a lot of other ways to do that, secure application architectures, things like that. But the foundational element is securing the destination for the workloads.
Yeah, the part I really liked about that was the phrase foundational. In everything that we do within technology now, security has to be part of that foundation, because one of the constant things that we always see is cyber threats and continue to increase. The risk and the cost of business continues to increase. So security as part of your foundational approach is essential. I do want to, kind of expand this conversation, because a lot of what I heard was focus around existing apps as we think about moving the things that we do to public cloud. However, a lot of cloud growth is driven by cloud native development. What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, I mean, it's security by design, right? So if you talk about automation, you talk about application architectures, what you really want to do is build secure, repeatable templates or code or infrastructure as code or configuration management. Everything that an application team needs should be designed to be secure upon deployment. Anytime an application team needs a new environment, whether it's dev, test, or prod, you should be deploying it from a secure template. Something that's been created, it's been governed, it's been secured, it's gone through tests, it's gone through checks. That way the application team essentially just deploys the environment and has what they need. It's blessed by the security team, and they can go about their business developing code and application features.
Yeah. So continue to just really love this approach of building in security as part of the foundation, but also building in security as part of the design, whether the existing apps or net new cloud native development. One of the, we continue to see massive growth in both areas across enterprises. Some organizations tend to be skewed towards more app dev, but at the end of the day, it's essential, everything you're doing. The interesting aspect too, and this is, something I want to run by you to see if you guys see the same thing. Often I see the narrative around cloud migrations as being, okay, well, we have these things that live within a data center and we move it to the public cloud and then we're done. Essentially, it's almost as if we hired a moving truck, threw everything in the boxes, and once it's there for good. But one of the real interesting stats we did on some research earlier this year is 53% of organizations say, look, we're moving data between our data center and our public cloud either regularly or all the time. These are things that constant movement of data, of apps is happening, is pervasive. It also fuels complexity. So as environments become more distributed, as things are always moving around, whether from our data center to public cloud or cross cloud, that fuels complexity. Nearly two-thirds of organizations are saying, look, all this complexity of our distributed operations of our IT infrastructure is slowing down our operations. So as you think about, as you guys are helping your clients improve their cloud adoption, accelerate their cloud adoption, what are some of the biggest challenges or common missteps that an organization may make? Any high-level advice for anyone listening?
Yeah, I would say plan to start, right? So the biggest mistake is, our lease on our data center is running out. It's time to get out. We've got to move everything really quick. We need somebody to come in and just move it. That works. You can do it if you have to. There's a lot of things you have to plan for, grouping applications together, making sure the data access is consistent, making sure there's not too much distance, literally physical distance between your workloads and the data. Latency, security is really important. And then, planning for iteration. So once you move things, maybe you're in a hurry, maybe you have to get things moved really quickly. you really want to go back and start looking at your applications, looking at your data access layers, looking at the ability to modernize some of your application services, whether it's one at a time, whether it's holistic applications, whether it's greenfield applications, net new essentially. You really just need to focus on continuous improvement, continuous iterations. And don't forget all the supporting services. Maybe you have a domain controller on premises that's been there for a long time. You really need to make sure those systems that migrate get access to the identity management systems and all the other tooling that's required.
Gosh, I'm trying to think what you didn't mention. It's so funny because this happens with any new technology, cloud being one of the more, which it's hard to call cloud new. But as organizations adopt it, they sit down, they look at all the methodology, all the processes they had in place for whatever they were previously using. And then for some organizations, it goes, well, once we use a new thing, then we don't need to do any of those things. When in fact, no, actually all those things, security, ensuring that, nope, we're actually getting the performance, the availability that we expect, that nothing has changed over time. All those things still matter. And it still plays a role. And I love that last point that you made. I was talking to a CIO a while back where they talked about how one of the big elements that they do within their cloud migration practices is not only the monitoring and understanding, do we get what we anticipate, but also, making sure that they plan for, possibly some tweaks later on, because you're not going to know, it's not going to be perfect. And everything is not going to be perfect in your first regardless of what you do, let alone something as complex as cloud migrations. One of the big, speaking of, these complexities that come up, is one of the big trends that we hit on a little bit, but, I really want to dive into skill shortage. There's a skill scarcity out there. There's a tremendous amount of demand for technical skills across all industries. And that's hitting a lot of what we're trying to do from a growth standpoint within the IT, within cloud. Some of the top ones we see, so we do an annual research study every year at ESG. Some of the top ones that jump out is cybersecurity, tends to be a top. Again, no surprise, we just talked about that. Automation, IT architecture and planning, and cloud architecture and planning also tend to be towards the top. And that when you have trouble with skill shortages, then that drives up the impacts of things like attrition, where you have to reskill people. You might have tribal knowledge you have to deal with. I'm really curious, as you work with your clients, how does the scarcity of skills or the complexity and the challenges of training the right people really impact these projects with your clients, maybe impact some of their decision making?
Yeah, I mean, the market in the last 2 years has gotten even more complicated than it was. I would say the reason customers come to us is for that very reason: skill shortages, lack of tooling, lack of automation. That's really where we help. We bring in resources from around the globe that are highly skilled in all of the areas that we cover. Digital is a very important piece, everything from data and security to cloud to architecture. That's all stuff that we specialize in. Not just that, we can build training programs for our customers. We can reuse and reshare some of the things we've developed, process frameworks, training, boot camp type things. So if we come and deliver a project for a customer, we may not just leave as soon as it's done. We may leave behind training material on how to run, how to operate, or continue managing it for a period of time. So really, that's why we help customers. There are skill shortages. We bring tooling to the table. Maybe you don't want your employees learning how to deploy applications to a public cloud environment. We can create a service catalog for them. The employees can fill out the required information and do the deployment all from a service catalog. So no skills required, just understanding what you need. The deployment gets done, and then they're pretty much ready to go. One
of the really fascinating things is years ago, when we started doing research on automation, for example, one of the big, I don't want to say it was significant, it wasn't a majority of participants in the study, and this was probably 5-6 years ago. Is somewhere around in the high 20s, low 30% of admins would say, look, we don't want automation because that's my job. I don't want you to impact my job. We fast forward to today, and this is one of the stats we saw in a study from late last year. 3/4 of administrators are saying, look, I'm under pressure to add more and more responsibilities to my job. My job's increased because we have so much work to do and we can't hire people. So automation and leveraging, folks like yourself are so essential, because at the end of the day, there aren't enough people to do everything you want to do. And so if you have the internal expertise that you have in your organization, you have to allocate them to the most valuable projects that you possibly can, or the most valuable roles, so to speak. And that's where somebody like NTT Data can play a huge role, is not only augmenting those skills gaps and allowing the internal expertise to be focused on the most valuable operations, but also the fact that you guys bring with yourself experience. This is not your first time. So doing any of these tasks. So you bring in those best practices, those experiences. And actually that's exactly where I want to go next. Is I know at NTT Data, one of the things that you guys have developed is this cloud adoption framework. I think we touched on it a little bit, but I'd love it if you just went into a little bit more detail, kind of walk through that approach and share a little of that with our audience.
Yeah, sure. I think everybody's probably familiar with the Microsoft's cloud adoption framework, AWS as well architected framework, Google's got an adoption framework. What if you're an AWS customer and all your guys know is Microsoft? Well, you need to come together at some point in time and learn what the commonalities are between them. So we took the approach of taking Microsoft, AWS, and Google's frameworks, combine them together to an NTT unified cloud adoption framework. It essentially steps our employees through the end-to-end process of adoption for cloud, everything from planning to deployments to migrations to iteration. So that continuous improvement program is part of a process. Once you're done, let's relook at everything, make sure there's no ways to improve. We've got, at the end of the day, hundreds of process documents for our engineers to follow. If a scenario exists, what should I do? How should I approach it? What are the things I need to look at? Lots of checkboxes, lots of help, lots of guidance. So you don't just get thrown into a project without a little bit of foundational information for how you should proceed. And that's something we've seen a lot of success with. It enables younger, fresher employees to come up to speed quicker, or maybe even more seasoned employees that haven't done a project in a period of time. They can go reference a piece of documentation that somebody else created in a real world environment.
If I take a step back and I think about the role of cloud, especially in light of what you just shared, is I think as public cloud adoption started to grow, 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago, I really believe, and I think this perception still exists, that people had this idea that, hey, all this complexity we have in the data center, once it's in the cloud, then, it's their problem. It's not my problem anymore. Someone else's role is going to do that. And that will free up all this time and effort. And then we fast forward to today, and it's not just, you're not just using AWS. You might be using lots of organization. You might be using multiple public cloud providers. You might have complexities. Each one has its own tools and management and even pricing paradigms, things you have to know and understand. Data, again, going kind of back to that stat I shared, data and apps are moving across that entire environment all the time. You might have different teams that now have to collaborate. So it's, in some ways, public cloud adoption has accelerated everything that we do from a business standpoint. But in other ways, it's added all these new complexities that we have to learn and embrace and understand, especially at scale. You walk through your cloud adoption framework. Now I kind of want to get into, when you go into clients, I'm real curious, what are some of the gotchas? What are some of the common things that people run into where they're like, ooh, that was a mistake, we wouldn't do that again? What are some, advice that for folks out there that are thinking about their own migration projects? Hey, make sure you pay attention to this. Outside of security, I think we talked, if you want to hit on security, that's fine, but security is obviously going to be a big role there. Anything else, though, that you see as kind of common missteps that folks run into?
Yeah, we won't skip security. Security is really important. Everybody cares about it. We don't want to forget it. But that should be the case anyway. Access to your system should be secure. Your data should be secure. Transit and at rest. People shouldn't be able to get the things they shouldn't. I mean, this is all standard enterprise grade security that's been around for a while. It gets a little bit more complicated in the public cloud, but I don't think it's any different for enterprise level security teams. Now, a more granular approach is probably what's new with security on the public cloud, looking at all the different services. An application used to sit on one VM. It used to be pretty easy to analyze. You'd have an agent they would look at it. Now, everybody's seen the Netflix graph. There's thousands of services that contribute to that. Each one has its own access pattern, deployment pattern. So focusing on the individual services of applications, from data to any layer that contributes to functionality of it's really important. So that's what's changed with security. Some of the failures we see is we're not going to iterate after we do it, whether it's a migration or a modernization thing. Keep looking at it, keep changing, evolve it, evolve the service, evolve the application, get rid of the application if it's not good, right? So don't be afraid to change. That's probably the most important thing for cloud native applications, is that iteration that just can't stop. And then, financial stuff is really important to customers. It's obvious most customers move to the cloud because they want to get out of this data center, cost problem that they had. But, if you just move all of your workloads and don't do anything else, you're not going to do much except save floor space at a colo or your own data center. So it's important to focus on that. And that could be as simple as, turning off and on workloads when you don't need them, or setting up scalability for application services. Those are some easy things you can do. Putting data in the correct location, putting data in the correct storage tier, those types of things. Customers, I think, just need to take a more holistic approach to what modernization means, and then enable their employees to use some of the new features on the public cloud environment.
Yeah, I think that's well put. In my experience with talking with organizations and in the research we do, it's not so much that, cloud is more expensive or cloud is less secure, because it's not. It's just secure. It's cost effective. It's the fact that and I'll focus on cost here. It's just that it's different. And if you come to public cloud services and you're used to, well, this is my paradigm, this is my mindset for how I optimize for costs in a data center world, and you take that approach, the way in which you optimize for cost effectiveness leveraging public cloud is often a little different. And if you don't plan to do that work up front, to kind of think about it, as well as the planning up front to how are you going to track it, how are you going to monitor it, and how are you going to create efficiencies as it gains, or as the workloads evolve over time, then that's one of the big things that I see where people miss. That's where people get those surprise bills, so to speak. And it's not necessarily quote unquote a surprise. It's driven by growth, driven by, hey, we're using these workloads and this data more, but it's getting more predictable in how organizations think about it. I want to shift. We've been talking a lot about research, and we've hit a little bit about what you guys are doing at NTT, but now I want to get more focused on this, to get to know you, what you guys do, how you help your clients. Real quick, Dominic, if you could give us a quick overview of NTT, high level of your services, as well as how you help your clients.
Sure. Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're a global service provider. We're part of a large corporation called NTT DATA. Our biggest value that we bring to customers is typically in the way we go to market. So we're a vertical based company. If you're a manufacturing customer, you want somebody that understands what that's like. If you're a healthcare provider or a payer or public sector customer, you need somebody that understands your business. So we typically lead with consulting. We come in the door, we try to understand the business before we ever present a technical solution to your problem. Understanding that business initiative, the imperative, the problem we're trying to solve, and then we try to present a technical solution. That's probably the most important thing, that industry-focused consulting layer that we bring. And then the next step down is we focus on what your customers need internally, and we present some sort of a solution. Our offerings range from application development, application modernization, data engineering, data science. We're talking about cloud and digital transformation quite a bit. Most of these pieces fit together. And then there may just be service desk. It may just be you've got to give your employees virtual desktop. So we cover pretty much the end to end for technical capabilities, from, including data centers, colos. NTT is one of the largest telecommunication companies in the world. A very large percentage of the internet traffic goes through cables that we manage. So there's a lot of that. So we literally are an end-to-end company, from the business all the way down to physical connectivity.
Yeah. So, just playing back what I heard, I think one of the big things, if I was thinking about engaging with you, where a tremendous amount of opportunity. There's just a ton, right? Leveraging your expertise, leveraging your skill sets as a way to augment, internal skills. The idea of accelerating those digital initiatives by leveraging you guys. I could see, your clients being able to say, look, we thought we could get 5 projects done this year. Now we can get 10 or because we're able to leverage your expertise rather than trying to manage resources in-house, which, in a world in which digital initiatives drive revenue, what that does is it brings those opportunities that might have been out 2, 3, 4 quarters out in the future. Now it brings that in today. And that's game changing. So I love that approach. The other thing that you hit on, which you just touched on briefly, is your overall vertical approach, which I absolutely believe in conversations I have with CIOs and in just the research we do on the market. I absolutely believe is essential for what you guys do, because running a hospital is very different than running, basically a media and entertainment conglomerate, so to speak, or running a manufacturing line. These are very different approaches to how you leverage data, to how you want to manage your resources, whether it's within public cloud or wherever that may be, how you want to engage with your clients. Having the workloads are very much different. How organizations are leveraging the data changes quite a bit. And so the ability for your clients to work with you, not only to leverage your expertise on, hey, we have experience in cloud native development and leveraging public cloud services. And that way we have experience in migrating these types of workloads to the cloud, but also we have that experience within your vertical industry. I mean, that's just tremendously valuable. Dominic, as I look at the clock, I know we're getting kind of close on time. Any final thoughts, any advice you have for anyone listening that's thinking about their cloud journey? Anything we didn't touch on?
Yeah, I think we touched on a little bit of it. So secure your applications, but focus on modernizing your applications, right? So have a good reason for migrating your workloads to the public cloud, and focus on making them better, make them more scalable, make them more portable, make the migration seem seamless to the customers. I think customers meaning your end users, right? Not just us, right? I think just planning out your migration, planning out your adoption is really important. And also, like I said, focus on the business imperatives. There's a reason that you're doing this. Let us understand what that is. We can try to help you throughout the journey.
Yeah. You brought up an excellent point that, I just completely glossed over. The whole point of doing these cloud migrations is not just to keep doing what you're doing, just have your apps living somewhere else. Is to be better, is to engage with your customers better, to be more efficient as a company, to be more nimble as an organization. And so you're exactly right. Is the goal of doing this is to be better, and that's what you should get. And so it's great to see that's a primary focus of how you do it. And again, gosh, we can't say it enough. Security is essential. It's vital in every element, regardless of where you are. And so that's absolutely critical, and it's very encouraging to see that part of that foundational layer that NTT Data brings. Dominic, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Scott. It was great having me. Thank you.
Anytime. And I also want to thank our audience for listening. If you'd like to learn more about NTT Data and anything that they do, please check out nttdata.com. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching.